Okay. So we just got back from that vigil, and I was telling you out on the porch that it was just amazing because even for me, we were standing there and people in the community didn't know who I was, but I had a couple come up and pray with me. And I mean, that's just who these people are.
This is Sutherland Springs. We're a good old country town. We're what everybody dreams of. Someday I want to move to the country. This is it. And I've always lived here.
And you've lived here, your family, how long now?
4 generations. My great-grandfather bought the place during the Depression. Back in the Depression, you had to have a stamp to buy an automobile. And they waited and waited and waited for the stamp. And they got the stamp, and my great-grandmother told the story that, they were so proud to have the stamp. And they sent my great-grandfather to get a car. She was gonna be styling in a car. And he drove into town and came back with a pickup truck without a cab on it. He had traded the stamp for the brand new car for a pickup truck, and she was mad as could be. But he started a trade route between here and Seguin and kept this community going during the Depression, kept them supplied with goods and stuff, and it allowed him to make money and buy the property that I now own. And again, I grew up on a dairy just down the road.
And everybody is like that here. Your buddy Mike. So we're in Mike's brewery in his house. He lives across the street from you.
Yes.
And how long has this friendship been going on?
As long as I can remember, I've known Mike. We grew up together. I grew up in the dairy down the road. He grew up in a house that was right there when he was very young, and just right outside that door. And we've been childhood friends forever.
And the kids have all grown up together?
Kids grew up together, yes.
And, a lot of, your kids still live here, Mike's kids live here. People stay in this town.
My daughter's building a house on our property now, and my second daughter's getting married very soon, and she wants to build a house on the property. My son and his wife haven't decided, but I'm sure sooner or later they will too. All my chickens are going to come home. I hope so, anyway.
Well, and they were telling me they work in San Antonio. They make an hour's drive every day, but they choose to do that because they want to live here.
Choose to do that because people don't understand when you can walk out your front door and you see the stars in the sky. And if you live in the city, there's too many lights for that. And the quiet in the neighborhood normally.
Well, and so then that brings us to, of course, the obvious. People do that, choose to live here because they feel safe. And, Sunday morning, that just shattered that for a lot of people in this one instance. So just tell us a little bit about how people are dealing with that.
Well, the community's coming together. We just came from a vigil, and this was so tragic. There's 27 people were killed, and over 20 were injured. That's over half the congregation. We're talking small town, small congregation. I don't know how we're going to deal with it. The town will come together and we'll move on, but it hurts. It hurts. Children were killed, and that was. I can't believe somebody that would be so vicious to do something like that and kill innocent men and women too, but innocent children is beyond fathom. I don't understand.
Well, Elena was telling us You know, they live across the street, as you know, Elena and Kevin, and they have, no wait, not Elena and
Kevin.
Kevin, yeah, and they have a little Ezra, right?
Yes, I have a little boy Ezra.
Yeah.
And he sits out here on the deck and plays with his stuff while we're hanging out on the deck on Friday nights. Yeah.
With his light up shoes.
What's that?
With his light up shoes.
Yeah, with his light up shoes. He's a cute little boy, bright kid.
She had a moment because one of the bullets went through their house because they live right across the street, and she was holding Ezra. They were, I guess they had heard shots, and they were closed in a room, and a bullet whizzed right past them. And I mean, what a moment for them. They live right next to the church, you know?
Right across the street from the church, yes.
And she was saying in that moment, Kevin was dealing with other stuff, and she said she felt like, man, I wish I had my gun. I wish I had a gun with me.
And that's going to be fixed too. I can tell you right now that will change. That will change.
Yeah. You had your gun, so.
I had my gun. I had it. It was locked in the safe. But when my daughter ran in and said the man was in tactical gear with a helmet and body armor, when I opened up the safe, I pulled out an AR-15, and AR-15 is much easier to handle and much easier to aim. And I grabbed a handful of ammunition. I didn't want to. I was hearing shot after shot after shot, and I didn't want to waste time loading a full magazine, so I just grabbed a handful and ran and started loading the magazine as I was running out the door.
You hadn't seen anything yet, though.
I had not seen anything, but my daughter had taken her car and drove down to the corner to figure out what the sounds were. And she was right down by the church in her car, and she saw him shooting, and she came back in the house and said, there's a man in black tactical gear shooting up the Baptist church. Those people are my friends. Those people have known my family. Those people have been here for generations. I kept hearing those shots, and I knew every shot might be representing another person getting hit by a bullet. And I didn't take time to put shoes on even. I ran out of the door, and I ran across the street. And as I approached the neighbor's house, I saw this gray SUV setting out front in the street with the engine running and the driver's side door open. And I still at that point was looking for someone and trying to survey a situation. I positioned myself behind a pickup truck, and as soon as I came up behind the pickup truck, it was a neighbor's truck. He came running from around the front of the SUV and turned to get in to the SUV. And when he turned to get in the SUV, I saw he had a pistol in one hand, and I saw a bulletproof vest, and I couldn't tell anything about him, the way he looked or anything else, as he had a helmet and a dark shield is all I could tell. He saw me, and we exchanged gunfire, and he got in his vehicle and he shot 2 rounds through the side window, and I saw very distinctively 2 rounds come through the window, and I shot through the window with my rifle, and the window collapsed down when I did. And I took another shot. And he drove off and turned down 539. And I looked to the left and I saw another man in a pickup truck. Yeah, I didn't know him or anything else, but he had been parked at the stop sign and saw the whole thing. I ran over and tapped on his window and I said, that man just shot up the Baptist church and we have to stop him. And he opened his door. This is a crazy thing to open a door for a man with a rifle that you just saw in a shootout. But he opened up his door and I got in and we gave chase. And he was driving very fast. And when he started, we couldn't even see the guy. He was already out of sight. But and we were passing cars and stuff, and we called 911. He called 911. And the first thing I did, because I had no idea how many rounds I started with, because I just grabbed a handful out of a box and stuck them in a magazine, and I thought, what if we catch him? And I dropped the magazine out and looked, and I had one round left in the magazine. Put it back in, and I knew at that point I had one in the chamber and one in the magazine. And I told 911, get there quick, we're going down 539. They said, where down 539? And about the time they asked that, we were at a crossroads where it turned toward Lavernia. At this time, we had already regained a visual on it, and we could see him. And we told them where the crossroads were, and they said they were sending officers, and we were staying on the line. And we gave chase in total, they say it was 11 miles. And he started slowing down. He left the road, and it looked like he was going to come to a stop. And I reached over and I opened the door, because I thought I was going to have to keep cover behind the door and get my rifle into position, because I didn't know what was coming. And just as I started to open the door, he took off again. He hit a road sign. It collapsed over the SUV. He got back up on the road and ran about 100 yards more down and back in the bar ditch the other side. And it was kind of in a curve. And we pulled up onto the curve and we stopped. And at that point, I told the driver, get down behind the dash, just stay out of the firing line. And I got out and I walked to the front wheels of the truck and laid the rifle across the hood and I had a tactical EOTech on my rifle, and I kept it trained on the side window of the SUV. And I started yelling, get out of the truck, get out of the truck. And I probably called him a few names I shouldn't have been calling him, but I was a little angry at that moment. And I waited a few minutes, wondering how long it was going to take the law. And I didn't know exactly when they drove up, because the first thing I heard, guy was focused on the SUV and wasn't watching what was coming down the road. And I heard a PA system say, driver, get out of the truck with your hands up. And he said it a second time, and I laid the rifle on the hood, and I started to walk to the back of the truck with my hands in the air. And he said, not you. And he said it on the PA, he said, not you. And I'm like, fine. And I went back over and I grabbed my rifle and put it back over the hood of the truck. At that point, I realized there was only one car there, and I might still be of some sort of use. And apparently he thought I might be some sort of use also at that point. And waited there until about 5 or 6 more squad cars came. And when those cars came, I figured my usefulness in this was over. And I took my rifle down and I laid it on top of the toolbox behind the cab. And I started to walk back to the cars, and they came with the PA system again and said, get back, get back. we'll come get you. And they brought the cars down, a car down, so I could use it as we walked back and got backward away from the fire, the potential fire. And they tell me now, I hit him a couple of times, and they say that at some point he ended it himself. And that's the official autopsy, is he ended it himself. But I stopped his aggression and made him run. I turned his fight into flight. And I did what I had to do. And
Well, our favorite saying is the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun
is a good guy with a gun.
It's you, Stephen.
And I'm going to tell you, I never, ever thought that I would be that guy. I never thought in Sutherland Springs, of all places, that would ever be a possibility. But it was always in the shooting sports and stuff. I used to shoot at a local shooting league at Black Hawk Range, and it was a weekly shoot, and they would come up with creative things, hitting multiple targets and moving and things like that. And we'd do a competition shoot 1 week out of or 7 weeks in a row, and the 8th week we would all bring a potluck. They'd supply the barbecue and we'd supply the side dishes, and we'd have awards. And it was fun and it was exciting, and it turned into shooting with the kids. And that was a really interesting story too, because we started shooting and we got qualified to be NRA instructors, and we started teaching the kids. And the range learned us that they gave us their secondary range. They learned that we were there every week with the kids, and they said, your kids shoot free. And they gave us their secondary range. And then week after week, our wives, we would get off church and we would go out, and the wives would shoot while the men were shooting with the kids. And then when us guys got through shooting with the kids, the wives would take the kids and they would go back and they would fix dinner for a Bible study, and it was the men's shooting league. And we did this week after week after week, and just the kids enjoyed it. It was a whole family. The range started sending people we didn't know. Said, take your kids down there and shoot with them. They'll train them. They'll train them. And we had several rules that the parents couldn't just drop their kids off and leave. We're not babysitting. And we had rules like we had one instructor for every youth on the line. And I used to tease and tell the parents, I'm gonna, if your child gets dangerous in any way, he or she will be set down and dismissed for the day. My 3 kids were NRA distinguished experts with a pistol through the NRA plan by the time they were 8 years old.
I mean, the training that you received, the training your kids have gone through, I mean, that played a part in how you reacted on Sunday.
It had to. It had to. It was crazy because it got, here in South Texas, it gets quite hot, and the kids started saying it was too hot to do it. So we stopped for the summer. The range called us back and said, we call y'all our church group, and we like y'all being there because when y'all are there, they clean up the language in the range, and more families come out. And we didn't never know that they had a name for us, but we were their church group. And we were instructing kids that we met that were brought out by the range and said, well, we got a family that said, well, where can my kid do this? Well, right here. And the range let us shoot there for free because of what we were doing.
Well, it's a testament to your faith too. And I know that you said that you're a spiritual man and faith is important to you. I saw it at the vigil. You were praying with your family. You were singing songs of praise with your family. How is that carrying you through? How did it get you through Sunday and stays with you now?
It's the only thing that carries me through.
Your faith.
I am a very blessed man. And my Lord has blessed me more than you can imagine. I have two of my kids are married now. One of them is engaged. My job's almost done. As a parent, all their spouses and prospective spouses are excellent people. And again, my chickens are coming home. They're coming back to Sutherland Springs.
You're the church family at the range.
What's that?
You're the church family at the range.
Well, actually, we don't do that anymore. I have my own shooting range on my property. I put down 18-wheeler tires and filled them with sand, stacked them up over 8 foot tall by 25 foot wide and 8 18-wheeler tires deep. And that's my backstop. And it's my own personal range. And the same people that meet here on Fridays go out to my property, and we kind of have a rule. If you shoot targets, you can get them out of I have a container that's waterproof. You shoot targets, you replace targets. You clean up your brass and keep the range clean. Once the target stands start getting worn out, we have a range work day and we clean up the targets and put new target stands up, and everybody pays for their own part.
It's fun, but it's also training. You're having fun, but you're also learning your firearm and training. And how many people do you think now find that really important?
I would hope that a lot of people think that that's important now. And people have told me before, well, you do all this shooting and you would probably freeze up and wet your pants, is what they said. You'd probably freeze up and wet your pants if it ever happened. And I've heard people tell me that all along. And I said, it might happen. It might happen. But I said, think about karate. Each belt advancement that you do, you're doing on a floor, not sparring with anyone else. You're doing those moves to practice those moves. And those moves what you're doing is training your subconscious mind. And then if you get into a fight, your subconscious mind, you don't have time to think about what you're going to do. Your subconscious mind takes over, and when somebody throws a punch, you sweep it away. And I said, think about what you're doing when you're training, when panic mode goes on, your conscious mind kicks off, and your subconscious mind does what it's trained to do. And if you don't have good training, it won't know what to do. And I said that could be possible if I was ever in a heated situation. I might freeze up. No one ever knows what's going to happen until it happens. And I always said, I hope I never have to know.
But thank goodness
Sunday,
you were there.
Sunday, I found out.
And you stopped him.
And I didn't freeze up.
I know your community thinks you're a hero. I know law enforcement has given you praise for what you've done. Who knows what could have happened, but the fact is your training kicked in and you did what you needed to do.
I had a man come up to me today, said he was in law enforcement for 30 years. And he said, I reacted like a law officer would have reacted. And that was a compliment to me, but that was a compliment. And what people need to know is us people that aren't law enforcement, the NRA members, law enforcement aren't afraid of our guns. They're not afraid of our that became evident when I put that rifle down on the hood of the truck and started walking back, and he said, "Not you." Okay, fine. I didn't want him to perceive me as a threat, and he did not. He knew who I was at that point. He knew who I was, and he knew that I had chased the guy there.
You were following the rules. You were the law-abiding citizen following the rules. They weren't, you're right, they weren't worried about you. You know, you mentioned, NRA members. We're so proud that you're a former NRA instructor. And, we're just honored that you're part of this organization. And just tell us how you feel about that. I mean, how the NRA has been a part of your life.
I've been a member for a very long time. I love the magazines. I like to read the. I like to read the armed response, or talking about people using their firearms and I never thought that I would be even considered for armed response. But yet here I am.
And, you said to us when we were miking you up, it's really nice to have you guys here, somebody who's on our side. Because I know there's a lot of media here, and I know it's been tough because you've turned down a lot of interviews from a lot of mainstream media.
I turned down a lot of interviews. And I was told by my lawyer, because I did grab a lawyer, and it was, I don't really need one, but nowadays, he was a family member, he called me up, he said, I'm just going to do this for you, let me be there. He wasn't worried about you guys. He wasn't worried about you guys. He was worried about everybody else in the media and what they might try to demonize me or something, say that I wasn't something that I am, try to portray me as some redneck bubba that,
They like to do that. They like to label NRA members, don't they?
They like to do that, and I don't like to talk to them. And I chose who I spoke to very cautiously.
So if they see an interview about what happened from another source, like NRATV, what are you hoping they glean from that?
I saw an interview on CNN of somebody, and he was, I know the guy, and all his facts were incorrect, and I thought, again, there's CNN, it's got it wrong. Where did they get the facts from? Well, they couldn't get the facts from me. And so they went to someone else.
They're going to hold on to whatever.
And they got their facts wrong. The BBC just asked me right out, and Katie Kirk, they wanted to interview me out here for tomorrow. First off, I don't even want the spotlight. What should be in the spotlight is this community and what happened over there. The pastor's 14-year-old daughter was killed, and him and his wife were in Oklahoma. The pastor's daughter was murdered by a maniac. A whole family, 4 children and 2 adults, were murdered by this idiot.
And people want to talk gun control.
And they're worried about my rifle. They're worried about my rifle. And I don't even care if anyone knew who I was. I didn't care if anyone knew who I was. In fact, it took my lawyer telling me, you're going to have to talk to the media. He said we can choose them, and it was funny because we chose one. He was a young man that was in my shooting club, graduated from Harding University, Harding Christian College.
I went to Astley Christian.
I taught him how to shoot, and now he's a anchorman for some ABC affiliate in Arkansas. And he called me. He called me and he asked me, he said, I don't want to pressure you for, I said, I would love to have someone on my side. And so he came down and he did a interview with me before you guys did.
That's great. I'm glad he was somebody you could trust. We feel honored that we are somebody you can trust as well. We know the message.
Well, again, he was an NRA member and another one of the distinguished experts from my group.
Sounds like you've had a few of them.
I have. I also taught some defensive classes and dealt with, this seems so funny now, situational awareness, seeing what's around and things like that. And I was no longer actually an NRA instructor at that point, but I thought that I could teach people about different types of actions and stuff and different ways to carry it from my experiences. And I had people talking to me all the time saying, I'm a woman and I'm small and I fear walking down the street. I can teach you, and we would do classes of anywhere from 10 to 20 people. And it's been a couple of years since I've done one of those. But
we get to talk to a lot of women who have come to the realization that their personal safety depends on a decision to purchase a firearm.
Well, and I've discussed it with Joe Tackett, the sheriff here in Wilson County before, and he knows that I do or did classes in the past, and that's another thing about the small town, because Joe Tackett said, "Oh, your mother knew me when I was this tall. My mother knew him when he was that tall." So Joe Tackett's known my family, and I know who he is, and in small town, anything goes wrong or something, I have personal connection to the community, in which when my kids were growing up, they couldn't get away from with anything. Anything they did wrong, someone in the town saw them do that, and I knew it before they got home. I love that too about this community. It's like I got eyes everywhere, and some people hate that.
The teenagers hate that.
Well, some people say, "Oh, in small towns, everybody got their nose in business." If your business isn't bad, who cares?
That's right.
My business was never bad, but I did do things when I was a teenager, and I got home and my dad said, "What were you doing?" I got a phone call. So
I wanted to ask you about Johnny real fast, because you mentioned he doesn't live here, and so he didn't know you when you stopped him and said,
did not know me.
Let's go.
He didn't know me.
But you saw him tonight for the first time at the vigil? Since that day? Since yesterday?
Yeah, I think that's the first time since I saw him since yesterday.
What did he say to you?
Well, he gave me a big hug, and he said we did what we had to do. And I said, "Absolutely, brother." It's funny how a situation like this can Get someone to call you brother.
Brings people together.
And it was amazing. Like I say, he just let me in his truck, and we were on the run.
But he saw the whole thing go down, right?
He saw
Kevin saw the whole like there were people in the community that saw this happen.
It happened in Fred and Kathleen are the neighbors that live right outside this door in the next house over, and it went down in their yard. Fred's been a friend of mine for a very long time also. And he saw the whole thing happen through his window. I called him up and I said, man, because when they shot at me, put a hole in his bullet hole in his house and put a hole in his windshield to his wife's car. And I said, man, sorry about the bullet holes in your truck. I was using it for, to hide behind. He says, man, you can use my truck for whatever you want for the rest of your life. It doesn't matter. He said, you use my truck.
Good for Fred.
Good for Fred. Well, he's that kind of friend anyway.
Yeah. He was glad you showed up with your gun.
He was glad that I showed up with a gun.
Yeah. I mean, that's the point here. We just feel so strongly about, that message.
He saw me run from my house. He's like, wow, really?
Everybody feels safer with you around, Stephen. It's obvious.
Oh.
And we need more Stephens to keep our community safe. And how do we spread that word? How do we spread the word that this is imperative for people to understand?
Well, in today's world, you try to spread that word and you're some sort of radical or something, and wait for the cops. Wilson County Police Department is a fine police department. Great officers, but they can't be everywhere all the time. And unfortunate part of that is so many times police officers mop up the mess and take the evidence and get someone behind bars. And we need that. But they can't be everywhere all the time. And sometime you got to be responsible for yourself. Yeah.
We've had law enforcement come on NRATV and say, you're your own best line of defense. We can't be everywhere at all times. We will come as soon as we can, but you are it. When something goes down in your house with your family,
I'm going to tell you the way it is here in Wilson County. If you call the Wilson County Sheriff's Department, because it's such a small town and everything else, they're coming. They're coming as fast as they can, and there's 5 cars coming sometimes. Because you may be the only call, and they're sending everybody, and they get there and they take care of whatever the problem is. But they may be all the way over wherever. Yeah. And they may be wherever in San Antonio too, or anywhere. Law enforcement gets there as fast as they can, and they do as good a job as they can. But sometimes you have to take care of yourself.
Sometimes you drive 11 miles taking care of the problem.
Sometimes you drive 11 miles. And when they were called, they had an active shooter at the church. They were coming to the church. Yeah. And they had people down at the church, and they didn't know at that point, they didn't know whether there was a second shooter or anything else. They're coming to the church. That's where the people are. That's where the people that need help are. And until we called 911, until Johnny called 911, and we gave them the description of the vehicle and which direction it was headed, they didn't know.
Kevin was telling me when we were sitting on the porch that the suspect, because I asked, I wonder how many members were carrying. But the problem is, Kevin was saying that he started shooting way before he got into that church. He started on the sidewalk. That's where Kevin saw him. He started shooting while he was on the sidewalk and continued shooting as he walked into the church, which, so everybody was already, that just, he knew what he was doing, and was trying to catch everybody off guard. And it's just, it's just sad, and I'm so thankful Kevin saw. I'm so glad Rachel came in and told you. And
No, it was actually Stephanie that came.
Stephanie.
Rachel was working on our house.
Oh, okay. I met a lot of family tonight.
Oh, I have a beautiful family.
You do.
Rachel and her husband are building a house on our property. Stephanie was at my home washing. She was actually washing dishes, and heard all that from the kitchen. And yes, Stephanie's the one that alerted me.
People carry in this town, right? I mean, people love their guns here. I know that.
Yeah.
Like, well, you mentioned it in your shooting range. You said at church after, everybody came, and it was a
family thing.
It was a family affair.
And it was a family thing, and it got to where kids from our church found out my daughter's shot, which, by the way, they had a problem dating for a while. Because they saw me shoot, and then they saw her. My Stephanie's 16th birthday, we had a big party on our property, and one of the local ladies owned some horses. She brought out 9 horses for the city kids, because we went to church in town, to ride the horses, gentle horses. We had a bonfire that was about 40 feet high by about 50 feet wide for her 16th birthday. We had a trailer with hay. This is the country thing. Had a trailer with hay, and their friends played music, so we had a hay ride. And the next morning, we set up the shooting range for all the kids to shoot. And the story, I remember it so perfectly. My daughter, she was 16, she just turned 16, and she rode that horse up and jumped off the horse. Well, we were all shooting there at the range, and she stepped off the horse, and she got down, and she said, "Dad, can I shoot?" I said, "Go at it." She loaded up 3 magazines for my .45. She put 2 in her belt, stuck one up there, as we had just set up bowling pins. We set up 20 bowling pins. She had 3 magazines, 7 rounds apiece. She had 21 rounds, and she started going across and knocking off bowling pins, and came all the way, changing magazines, and I taught them to pull the magazine, drop one, and before the last round was fired, so they wouldn't have to rechamber, because that was part of the competition that we used to do in the games that we used to play. And she missed one of the bowling pins. But she had 21 rounds, 20 bowling pins. She cleaned it up with the last round. And one of the guys, and then she turned, swung up on the horse, and started to ride off. And the guy says, "You can't go after you did that." She says, "Sure I can, I'm done." And she kicked the horse and ran. He looked at me and said, "She always shoot like that?" I said, "No, she missed one."
It's a disappointing day.
Yeah.
It's a disappointing
No,
day.
she missed one.
Yeah,
and he's looking
like
at
her.
me with his mouth wide open.
Just not like her to miss one.
Yeah. And of course that was a big joke, but
Yeah.
she was really good with a pistol.
Yeah.
And that was when she was 16 and she was shooting a .45. And the way the NRA starts with a simple rimfire pistol, 2 hands on a table, and starts the process. First step, 2 hands on a table, shooting at a target. Now, use 2 hands standing up, and you just move, and then right hand, left hand, she didn't know how to flinch with recoil when I moved her to a 45. Worked her up from a 22 to a 9mm. When I gave her a 45, the first 3 shots with the 45, I remember she put 3 holes in the middle of the bullseye and said, "Dad, this really kicks." I said, "Babe, look what you did." "Yeah, but it really kicks, but look what you did." She was not having a problem with recoil. And I don't know if you want to put this in there or not. You can put this in there. I'd kind of like to talk to Heather Deppy. Do you know who Heather Deppy is? Yeah. Heather Deppy was one of my shooters. Her and her father helped us. It was part of our shooting group. Heather Deppy, when she was 15 and when Heather Deppy was 16, and she was my daughter's best friend, taught our West Point cadets, was invited to teach our West Point cadets to shoot. 15 and 16 Junior Olympics, several Junior Olympics championships. When she turned 17, she got with West Point, and I think it was Ciro Rodriguez signed her paper to help her get in. She's a West Point graduate now. She shot for West Point. She set women's collegiate national record.
We got to get in touch with Heather.
Huh?
We got to get in touch with Heather.
And she's now serving in our U.S. Army. Mm-hmm. She called me the other day when this went down.
I'm sure.
She's like another one of my kids. Love her to death.
What'd she say to you?
She said she was proud of me. I'm proud of her. I'm proud of all my kids. I'm supposed to be the one proud of them. I am. I'm proud of both my daughters. I'm proud of my son. They're you know, it's funny when a parent can honestly sit back and look at their children and say, I know they're my kids, but I actually like them too. Yeah, and you're laughing at me. I'm serious about that. You know, I actually like them.
They actually like you too. Blake just said out there, "Dad, everyone's so proud of you." Because I said, "We are so proud of you. The NRA is so proud of you." He goes, "We're really proud of my dad too."
Well, when he left, before he left, he gave me a hug. That's a full-grown man still hugging his father. And not afraid to show it.
Awesome. Anything you want to say to the NRA and its members?
Stay sharp. Okay, I don't know. Stay sharp. Stay vigilant. And you never know, and never. Someone asked me the other day, "Do you feel safer in the town now?" And I said, "No." I think he thought I was going to say yes because I helped take care of an issue. I said no, because before this happened, I felt totally safe in Sutherland Springs. Who would imagine this to happen in Sutherland Springs? Now I don't feel near as safe as I did. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be more ready. I'm not going to load a magazine anymore. There's going to be one loaded. And it's going to be fully loaded instead of grabbing a handful and chunking a few in a magazine.
And this is what everybody needs to understand. This can happen anywhere, at any time, and people need to be aware and ready.
It can happen anytime. And I was lucky that I didn't have to use more than what I did. I had 2 rounds left in the magazine. There you go. Talk about your 10-round magazine bans. I had only 2 rounds left in the magazine, and if he had not done what he did, would I have had to use more? So there's a lot to learn from this, and this country needs to open their eyes.
Yep, they think that having gun legislation and stricter gun control is going to solve what happened.
Oh, you don't need any more than 10 rounds. Oh, really? Are you sure? I didn't this time. But I could have. I was down to 2 and didn't know the future. The next time I have a full magazine, and it'll be over 10 rounds.
Good guy with a gun, Stephen.
You're watching NRATV with Grant Stinchfield.